So my talk for today, let's get out of this, is on inspired living. There we are. And the thing about inspired living is that the only person it needs to inspire is you. Your life, is it inspiring to you? Now, I know for myself, there have been times in my life, I've looked at my life and I said several different things. This isn't working at all. Or this works, it's okay. It's okay, it works. And then there are the times I've said, I'm inspired by what it is I'm doing. And what I want you to know is that more than anything else, the world needs people who are living inspired lives. Because if you're living an inspired life, it's inspiring somebody. Maybe not everybody, right? That song I just played inspires me. It probably inspires some of you, and some others are going, that's not my cup of tea. And so when you're working on your inspired life, you cannot be looking out at others. Remember that when God gave you your life, when divinity came through you, when you were made here and given your calling and whatever it is you came to be in this world, it was not a conference call. It was for you. So you can't worry about others not understanding. Now, I have spent a lot of time in my life surrounded by people who love me who did not understand how I was living my life. They could not relate. It wasn't how they would do it because it wasn't their life. I've had people be very upset with me about how I live my life. And so people may get upset with you when you decide to step up to what is inspiring for you. Other people may not understand. They may not be able to relate. But that's not what's important. What's important is does it inspire you? Or is it just okay? The possibility of the difference is dramatic. So my intention when I wrote this song was to have it be inspiring to me. And so, and that's how we start, right? The creative process always starts with an intention. Sometimes conscious, sometimes unconscious. Either way, there's an intention out there. You want to know how you're creating, it's the intention you put out there. Now, the thing about it is how we're looking at what it is that's going on, because as I'm going to get to, there are times we can look at what's going on and go, this isn't working at all, when that isn't actually true. It's just our doubts in seeing the steps that are moving forward. So so the first thing I do, because one of the things that happens is when we set an intention, the first couple of steps actually usually appear pretty obvious. What are we going to do first? And what I did first is I pick up my guitar, because my particular process in writing songs is I use the music as a net to capture lyrics. That's how I do it when I write my songs. And so I picked up the guitar and I started playing around, and I came across some open air chords, like similar to the ones you heard, but not the ones you heard. And kept playing around, and some lyrics started coming in. And so I'm working with these lyrics, and it's starting to look like it's pretty good. Like this song's coming along, and I'm going with it and seeing where it's leading me in melody and lyrics. And I'm about 2 weeks in, 4 pages. And I don't know if you know this, but the average song is about 1 page of lyrics. Okay? And I'm now up to 4. And going through the process of seeing what fits and what doesn't, I'm now getting closer to 8 pages of lyrics, 4 weeks in, and I've noticed that there are two patterns to the creative process. There's the one where you put out an intention. Maybe you do a spiritual mind treatment, which for those of you who are new here is what we call affirmative prayer, right? It's our way of focusing that divine energy onto what it is we want to intend into the world, invoke in, right? And so sometimes you do that and then poof, the thing shows up. And you're like, wow, this stuff really works. I was in sync, it all was coming through, everything was great, right? Has anybody else here experienced that? When using this stuff or you're getting clear, it's like, poof, it just shows up, and isn't that great? And wouldn't it be great if that happened all the time? And then there's the other creative process. The one where you're going along, you're dealing with stuff, it looked good at first, but then all of a sudden, it's a mess. Because the creative process can get incredibly messy. And it's in those moments that it's a mess that sometimes, if we let it, the doubts start coming in. Oh, maybe it wasn't meant to be. Right? Or this just isn't working at all. Instead of, this is part of the creative mess of me having my intention show up. This is just a mess, and that's just part of it. The organic process is a lot of times not this step A, step B, step C, here it is. Sometimes you gotta just sit with the mess and go, okay, there's something going on here, and I don't know what it is, but I know that because I've intended it, I know because I've put it forth, it shows up. Now, a lot of times, what gets in our way is it's not looking the way we wanted it to look, instead of the quality we're after. And we always got to go back to, what was the original intention? Mine was to write an inspiring song. Something that inspired me. I didn't say it had to have this chord, it had to say this, it had to do this, and why what? And I noticed that when I speak to people who start talking about their creative process in a way that they're thinking it's not working, a lot of times what they're stuck on is how it looks. And if you get stuck on how it looks, it can really look like it's not working, right? When that's not actually what's going on. It just means there's something bigger, something larger, something greater that has yet to take shape and form in a way that you can see it, that I can see it. So I'm 4 weeks in, I've got 8 pages of lyrics, and I'm looking at this thing and I'm going, this isn't working at all. This is a mess. And yet I know that there's a song here someplace, but let's try again. So I start over. And yet, maybe you've noticed that when you start over, you don't really start over, right? Because you're now starting from the place of all the things that didn't work. Thomas Edison said, I didn't fail making the light bulb 1,000 times. I learned 1,000 ways not to make a light bulb. And so here I am, 4 weeks in, 8 pages of lyrics going, I now know all these different ways of this song isn't going to work this way. So I start, make a fresh page, start again, pick up my guitar, start playing. And I really like one of the things I gained from the process was the open air chords. I really like the sound of that. It's just so airy and, meditative. And so I keep playing around with that until all of a sudden I come up with the riff that you did hear. And then from there, and I was like, oh, okay, now I'm on to something. And so maybe you've noticed that in your own process, that you get to a point where you get past the big mess, or maybe the mess didn't happen and you actually were lucky enough to start out with, oh, I'm on to something. And so you start making some steps. And it wasn't long after this that the first verse and chorus downloaded, and I had them. And I was like, that's great. Okay, I really like that. Now what? And so maybe that's happened to you, where you've been in your process, where you're going along. It looks like it's working, but then you run into what could feel like a brick wall of now what? When it's really not. It's still just part of the mess of the creative process. Something's bubbling around. You just got to be willing to stick with it. It's up to you to be able to hang in there during those times. It's up to me to be able to hang in there when things get messy, when things can feel like they're not working. It can feel like I've hit a dead end. And so 4 weeks later, 10 pages of lyrics later, finishing the song 4 times, I knew I still didn't have it. But I knew it was there. It was just being a mess. So I was like, okay, this is a mess. We're just going to have to be there. And so at these particular times, when it gets like that, what I do is I take a breath and step back. I'm not quitting. I know it's there. And the thing about it was, at the time when I was writing this song, I had announced in Asheville that I was going to play a new song. And so I had a deadline. So I could have fallen into a place of real urgency around of, what am I going to do? I've got these 4 finished songs. They're good. They're okay. They work. Maybe I could just play one of those. I could have done that. I mean, I don't want to get up on that Sunday and say, sorry, I don't have the song ready, or be embarrassed. All the things we go through, right? It'll be embarrassing. It won't work right. I'll look like a fool up there. Maybe you felt some of those things, or am I the only one? And so I sat back, I took a breath, and I allowed myself to know this works. This works magnificently. A long time ago, I came up with a affirmation for myself that I used for a while that said, my life works. And then I realized that didn't sound inspiring. And so I moved it to, my life works magnificently. That was more inspiring. Magnificently. And so one day I wake up and I have this dream of the woman in a wheelchair. I was like, oh, that moves it into this whole other place. That makes it this whole other scenario. That what I'm doing here is showing in the first verse a vision of what somebody sees for themselves. And then in the second verse, where they're really coming from to get there. I started crying, which is a really good indication that I've hit upon something that I'm inspired by. I was like, okay, now I got it. And with that level of motivation, being willing to see that picture so strongly, the rest just, unfolded. Even the bridge where I'm saying, I'm not going to decide this for you as to whether the surgery works or not. You get to decide based on your beliefs. And now all of a sudden, I've got me a song that's inspiring me. I got up and played it in Asheville, and they went nuts over it. I played it for some ministers, and they went nuts over it. And I thought, okay, this thing's really got some, something to it. So, and then there are people that were like, I don't get it. And if I was, in a place of doubt, self-doubt, worry, I could be very impacted by the few who don't get it. Has that ever happened to you? Because it has happened to me in my past, where I've been in a room of folks where everybody's really into what I'm doing, but there's this one person who's nodding their heads like this, and they have all my attention. I don't do that anymore, but there was a time that kind of lack of confidence really impacted me. But I realized that all I was letting other people do was limit my inspiration with their ideas about what inspiration should look like, when it's about what inspiration should look like for them, which is different from what it looks like for me, right? Which is different from what it looks like for you. This is about your life, my life, and how we inspire ourselves. Not in a conference call situation, to allow ourselves to grow in the way that works for us. So Ash and I, we have been through a lot in our lives. You know, when for myself, there was literally a time in my life when I was homeless, sleeping on a park bench. And so I know what life looks like when it doesn't work, right? Ash and I, we get together and we made a pact around living an inspired life. This was our pact, that we were not going to settle for what works. We're going to go for what's inspiring. And in doing so, we have been through a lot of situations that weren't all that much fun. And maybe you've been through some of those too, when you make that stand. And again, it can feel like it's not working, but that isn't the case. It's just that the creative process is organic and has its own way of showing up that may be very different from what you expected, right? So we actually wound up at one time living in a 2-room hut where we held Christmas for her 2 kids and it was so tiny. From there, we were 1-bedroom, a normal size 1-bedroom apartment. From there to a 2-bedroom, normal size bedroom apartment. We've watched our lives through the act of inspiration continue to grow and move to a 3-bedroom, 2-bath apartment that was stunningly gorgeous, with a trail right next to it in Asheville just before we came here. And so one of the things that inspires us is to continually have that move forward. So one of the things that we intended when we got here was, this time it's got to be a house. We're moving up. And so we weren't here 2 weeks before we found a house 3 blocks from here that we were able to move into yesterday. And the best part about it is, the rent on that house is lower than what we were paying for our 3-bedroom, 2-bath apartment in Asheville. I mean, it just fit our budget perfectly. Plus, and the space, we were wandering around the house yesterday going, what are we going to do with all this space? And we have a backyard and a garage, And for some of you, that may not sound inspiring because you already got it, right? Because that's how it works. What's inspiring for some is not inspiring for others. For us, this was a milestone. And that is a great way to judge how you're doing on your path. Do you run across in your everyday life milestones, things that have never happened before? Ash and I had a great one just yesterday. For the first time in our lives, we were sitting there going, oh, today it's got warmer. And at this temperature, it feels great. I never thought that would happen. But that's what's possible, right? And when you're willing to get outside, because here's the thing about this. This is the thing. So the one thing I've learned about the inspired creative process is it's uncomfortable, it's risky, it's unsafe. There was nothing comfortable or safe about us moving up here. We had no idea. I mean, I know that there are a few of you in this audience who have lived in another country, really lived in another country, but I never have before. I have visited other countries, but never picked myself up and my family and gone to live in one, right? It was risky. But it wasn't just risky for me. It was risky for you guys because you don't know who I am. I mean, we're learning, we're getting to know each other. But here you are saying, well, we're going to pay you this money and, help you move up here and be financially tied to you. And we hardly know who you are. That was pretty risky on your part, as much as it was risky on our part. And in this realm of risk, in this realm of the uncomfortable, we get to create the inspired together. It is clear to me that because of the commitment you've made to Ash and I, you are open to unlimited possibilities. And so are we. And that's what we get to have here in this risk of working together. There's no telling how it's going to turn out, but I can tell you for certain it's going to turn out in a way that we're all inspired by. I know it. It has to be, because that's how the creative process works. As long as we don't fall into that place of doubt of, oh, we hired the wrong guy, oh, I took on the wrong church, or whatever, those kinds of thoughts, but instead say, okay, this is part of the creative mess. Now, so far, it's been like the honeymoon period. But being I'm on my fourth marriage, I actually know what happens after that. And so I'm just setting the stage now for letting you know that I am committed and got both feet in, and I'm here to work through the creative mess, however it looks next. That we're in this together. And between us, we not only will create an incredible center here of love, of wonder, of a spiritual high that we get to take out with us into the world, but we also get to flourish in our own individual lives by the support we're getting from each other. We all get to flourish together, individually. We get to take it out and have impact on others by simply the act of being inspired ourselves. And I promise you, for all the people who may say, what the heck are you doing with your life? There will be others who will be like, wow, what the heck are you doing with your life? That's what we get to have here. That's what inspired living can do. And as long as we're making a stand for that, we will be impacting others, who will then be impacting others, who will then be impacting others, and that's how we make a real difference in the world. By simply being who we have come here to be in our inspired lives. I know this for me. I know this for you. And I love you so much. Thank you.